Hello and welcome to our December 1 installment of Canal English Speciale, an edition in which we attempt to shine the lights on first, President Paul Biya's vow to silence Anglophone secessionists currently tracking and killing security forces in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, the apparent crack-up within the ranks of the Northwest Fronts Union, OFU, the SDF's ongoing parliamentary disturbance, and finally, President Paul Biya's 500,000 laptops promise to university students across Cameroon. Thanks sincerely for tuning in, and thanks once again for opting to share part of your precious time in our company this afternoon. We'll be back in a jiffy to engage deliberations. So President Paul Biya is finally back in the country from the 5th African Union European Union Summit that held in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire from November 28 to November 30. That was in Abidjan once again. The head of state's comeback on November 30 coincided with another instance in the unfolding serial killings by, Anglophone secessionists of defense and security, both in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. And so there is little wonder that when the president came back home, his tone was tough and his speech was unforgiving. Here's our take on the president's appraisal of the ongoing, what some call serial killings of police officers and soldiers in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. A time-worn proverb observes that whenever the cat's away, it is recreation time for the mice. Referring to the continuously flaring Anglophone crisis, one may be tempted to flaunt the hardline pro-separatist Anglophones as the mice and the President of the Republic as the cat. Just that in this case, the popular adage hardly holds any sway anymore. In fact, it does not matter whether the cat is abroad or at home. The mice still play and are currently raising their game level to dangerous eyebrow-raising levels. About a dozen defense and security forces decimated within the space of a fortnight, including over half killed when the President of the Republic was home. That's simply put a fresh and troubling dimension to the evolution of the Anglophone crisis. And so returning home on November 30 from the African Union European Union Summit staged from November 28 to 30 in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, the President's tone was understandably unforgiving and tough.
Avec émotion, l'assassinat de 4 militaires camerounais et de 2 policiers dans le sud-ouest de notre pays. Suite à la disparition de ces 6 valeureux militaires et policiers, je voudrais présenter mes condoléances aux familles éprouvées, ainsi qu'à nos vaillantes forces de défense et de sécurité. Je pense que les choses sont désormais parfaitement claires pour tout le monde. Le Cameroun est victime des attaques à répétition d'une bande de terroristes se réclamant d'un mouvement sécessionniste. Face à ces actes d'agression, je tiens à rassurer le peuple camerounais que toutes les dispositions sont prises pour mettre hors d'état de nuire ces criminels et faire en sorte que la paix et la sécurité soient sauvegardées sur toute l'étendue du territoire national. Je vous remercie.
On the back of his declaration, the president's collaborators instantly went to work, while the minister delegate at the presidency in charge of defense, Joseph Betty Asomo, summoned a high-level security conclave. Communication Minister and government mouthpiece Issa Chiroma Bakari not only confirmed the killings.
In the night between November 28 and 29, 2017, some heavily armed terrorists attacked the elements of our defense and security forces dispatched within the framework of mission to protect the territorial integrity of our country in the Akborkem German locality in the Manu Division Southwest region. The servicemen of the 22nd Motorized Infantry Battalion of our army were cowardly assassinated during the attack.
He also presented this eye-opener and blacklisting of the so-called terrorist secessionists.
This other terrorist attack, which occurred in the Manu Division, brings to 8 the number of military staff and gendarmes who have already been killed by the secessionists. The government is therefore taking as witnesses those who some time ago were still questioning our words when we claim to be dealing with full-fledged terrorist organization.
And while the separatists are taking turns going online to claim responsibility for the murders, analysts are directing fingers of accusation at the government. According to some, the government could have found solutions to the Anglophone agitation without necessarily involving the defense and security forces. In other words, the strong-arm approach opted for by the authorities is currently backfiring, and the outcomes remain as unpredictable as obtained during the early days of Boko Haram's penetration into Cameroon's far north region. So it's time for us to begin rolling the red carpets to welcome some of our panelists for today's edition of Canal Speciale. Michel Ndoki is from the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. That's the party which has as leader Kamto Maurice, who's been bursting the political landscape across Cameroon for the past several months. You are also a people advocate, am I correct, Michel?
Yes, I am, and yes, you're correct.
Welcome once again.
Thank you, welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I was told before you came that you're very eloquent and that I should be very careful the way I pose some of the questions to you.
Oh my God.
Should I be scared?
I think I should be the one scared, and I think that's the reason you're telling that to me now.
I must also add that you work in Douala. You work alongside barrister Alice Nkom, who is a renowned human rights defender across Cameroon. Of course, she gets herself...
True lady.
She gets herself into controversy every now and then when she gets to defend homosexuals in Cameroon. That's not a bone of contention today, because Kejan Henry is here. Welcome from the Central News Desk.
Thank you very much, Divine, and greetings to Doki.
Well, the president actually came back from Côte d'Ivoire last night. It was too late for us to do a breaking news session, but you're here right now, and some say better late than never.
Yes, all the time, you can make out news, even out of breaking news, 24, 30, 48, or even 72 hours. It's true, Mr. Bia arrived very late at night. We were out of the office. Well, if he had informed us that he was going to come, Well, I'm
And
not
some
like
say that's
saying
where
that.
the problems begin, because
Yes,
it's hard to know the
it's hard to know
president,
the president's agenda.
and calendar.
Yes, sometimes he's at the airport. They will tell you le temps du président est ne pas l'autre temps, as I always say. Just like say, God's time is not our time.
Okay.
And so, anytime he can take off, he can decide to stay and leaves when he wants.
Okay, so he came back talking tough and vowing to wipe out the Anglophone secessionists. Does it take the killing of several defense and security forces for the president to talk that tough?
Well, the last time President Biya spoke about the killings of defense forces, I remember when it was, I want to call that a mass killing. I remember some 21 soldiers were killed.
In the far north region of Canal?
At the time, no. At the time, it was Colonel Oyono, who was the commander of the naval base in Douala, when there was a requiem session that was held at the airport, at the 21st airport base in Douala. I think the president spoke that time. Well, he's been speaking, but not as much as he spoke, because this airport declaration that he made probably want to speak volume of how he used to react in some certain situations. Remember, during the declaration of war against Boko Haram,
from Paris.
It was done from Paris.
17th of May 2015, 2014.
Yes, and incidentally, he did this one at the declaring the war against a secessionist organization that followed the feat that you did, and the minister Issa Chiroma Bakari, fortunately enough, did not mention the name of the organization, because they said terrorist organization.
We're going to actually listen to the entirety of the minister's intervention. He actually mentions Kakov, and he actually calls the full names of the organization. What's the difference between, I'm just taking you by surprise on this. We're coming back to the real question. What's the difference between a secessionist and a terrorist?
That's a very good question, and depends in which context you're asking the question.
Right.
Of course, if we're talking about the definition of the word in the dictionary, a terrorist is a person who is trying for political reason to create a feeling of terror and instilling fear among a certain group of people or part of the population. A secessionist is someone who says, I think the entity called country to which I belong is not the current entity, and that we should create another entity, and that new entity would be my nation. So those are two different, that's the reason why, for example, you used to have Czechoslovakia, and now you have Czechia and you have Slovakia. And I don't think that happened, and those who were saying we want an independent Czechia were called terrorists. I think in our mind those are two very different things. Now, if you come back to the context of Cameroon and the current situation, probably the reason why we need to put a word so hard like terrorist is that this gives a weapon to the government to arrest those people and put them legally under custody or in jail.
Okay.
That's the thing. You cannot be sentenced to death because you want to create a new country. But because you're a terrorist, whatever the definition of this word is, yes, you can. And a government who doesn't, where people do not want you to have that conversation, will take you as a terrorist and put you in jail and stop the conversation.
I'll stay on with you, because if you listen keenly to what President Paul Biya actually said, he actually said these words, he combined them. He said terrorist secessionists, which means you should not be naive to think that there's going to be a huge remilitarization of the Northwest and Southwest regions.
I do think that's something we should anticipate, and it is very, very sad.
Okay.
Because up until now, when we were talking about war, we were talking about the foreign countries, foreign people attacking us. So you need to defend yourself.
Right.
Okay. In this situation, we're talking about brothers and sisters and fathers and sons, and so who is on which side? How are we going to decide who is our enemy? How are we going to redefine ourselves, Cameroonians, are now as now enemies? Okay, because as a population, we should be behind our forces who are
law and order,
defending us
forces.
as Cameroonian. This is not about Mr. Paul Biya or the government. This is about us, the people, Cameroon. And he is telling us that we are attacked. So we need to understand by whom.
I have looked at several headlines on this matter, and Kejan, one of them very beautifully crafted from CNN, says that Cameroon is at war with itself.
A very good one. Cameroon is at war. Doki just said it with
itself, right?
And we don't know the other the entities or the adversaries who are at war. Because
you can claim you don't know, Henry. Communication Minister Isachiro Mabakari clearly states that these
but
people,
if you look at what CNN craft,
who are clamoring for separation.
Good. Cameroon is at war with itself. Ndoki just said this by defining clearly the words. We have been defining these words correctly on this panel. A cessation. It's just like divorce in a marriage. A divorce, which is a legal procedure, is a jurist. Somebody who says, I'm fed up because my husband is beating me. Okay, a lady says, I'm leaving. Now, if that lady is leaving, if that lady clamors to leave, how do you tag the husband? Would the husband tag the lady a terrorist? So, but now, if that lady and the man are not in tandem with their living together, would we say that they are at war? That is the issue why CNN had to craft it.
Okay.
To say that we have problems with ourselves and we are unable, and using another means, like the military way to solve this problem.
Okay.
Which is a small, I put it small, a civil problem.
Okay. Now let me give you. I think this is going to be an interesting twist to the start of our debate on the panel tonight. President Paul Biya Michel has frequently passed for the Cameroonian who has been the custodian of the country's peace and tranquility. He has several times wished that he be known as that person who preserved Cameroon's peace, stability, and tranquility. But now it is curious because his critics and fault finders say he is declaring war against the same peace he's been struggling to preserve.
And it's the second time he's doing that. So he went from a place where he was claiming to be the person who gives peace to us,
to an extent, democracy.
Yes, like a present, because we've been nice. And he's now moving to a stage where he's telling us, now I am at war with you. And he is begging, he goes out of this country to the UN nation and begs for peace. So
how so? How begs for peace?
He said that himself, and it's difficult for me to say how that comes, but he said that himself, that we are all beggars for peace. That is telling us that this is not our leader. Unfortunately, this is not our leader, because our leader is someone who listens to us and whom we listen to.
And
so if he is at war,
your leader is not going to let the country be balkanized because he wants to preserve peace, right?
Because he doesn't want a conversation to happen. And that's I believe, for every single Cameroonian, because I would not want to put it as a Anglophone versus Francophone conversation. Some of us are saying they want a different country. And because of this conversation, and because he believes this conversation should not happen, we are all at war.
I've spoken to a couple of people who say that, respecting Cameroon as a nation means respecting this nation's constitution, right?
Of course.
And that constitution says, just like President Paul Biya reiterates, that Cameroon is one and indivisible.
Oh, yes. And the constitution used to say the mandate of the President of the Republic is this, okay? And he didn't have any respect for this constitution. And this is not to say constitution should not be changed. A constitution is the reflection of what we
The
as
aspirations
people
of the
think about how we should live together. Okay? Don't make it more than that. Now we are reflecting, we have a feeling, we are expressing frustration about how we live in this country. And it is okay. We believe in CRM that it is okay in that case to sit down and say, what do we want to change in this contract? We cannot have someone telling us you're a terrorist and you should be sentenced to death. You should be killed because you want to have a conversation I don't want.
Keja Henry?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it laudable to at least pull the whip when you want to insist on preserving peace? At times, would you pull the whip? I didn't say trigger.
No, you didn't say trigger. Yes, you could pull the whip, but when it comes to understanding who your people are or who your children are, I think you will not even remove the whip. You should ask for dialogue. Let's talk. What is, in fact, ask questions, live in dialogue, because that is even above. Ask questions. What is happening? I might just probably deviate a lot because, very briefly, if it were that the shackles of our democracy is shaken, we will understand. Is our democracy shaken? Now, we are at war with ourselves. But if I find my army moving to defend my territory, don't remember the famous speech by Winston Churchill when the UK or Britain was attacked. The British stood in unison. They stood in the House of Commons and Lords and gave him the thumb up and go for the war.
Okay. I'm sorry to have to interrupt you, but I want you to answer with a yes or a no, Keja Henry Atembe. Can the secessionist insurrection, as it has been labeled by some members of government, be halted with the barrel of the gun? Yes, no?
No.
Is that yes or no?
I do
Michelle?
not believe so. I do not believe so, and I want to say I do not believe so because we would be killing ourselves. This is committing suicide. And it's like asking us, what kind of life do you think you will have after committing suicide? Seriously, we're talking about an army. For the past 50 years or so, did the government decide that army people will come from 8 regions out of 10? Are those army people Cameroonians?
Of course they are.
Children of
Cameroonians?
For some, children of a descendant of the warriors of Nso, like our Honorable Joseph Wirba. Because if that's the case, you are telling them to go back to other warriors, descendants of the warriors of Nso, and kill them because now they are called terrorists.
Okay.
This is committing suicide. And you cannot deal with that issue that way. That's the first issue. The second one is, how many people do you have that are behind us, that are behind you, as this person who is declaring war to some of your fellow compatriots? How many people do you have behind you? And I believe our president should ask himself that question, because he might be surprised with the answer. Do we want, seriously, do we want in a part of the country people to go and kill other people? No, we don't.
Okay.
We don't want military to be killed. We don't want policemen to be killed. But we don't want students to be killed either. We don't want young men leaving their villages to go and live in the forest because otherwise they might be kidnapped and raped and killed. We don't want that. We want this country to go back to where it should have remained. That is a peaceful area where we are all happy to live together.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, and I want another very brief response because Keja Henry is expected to stretch the response. Is this a state of affairs that should, I don't say could, that should interrupt the organization of elections in 2018? We're in December now. Your party, the
That's a tricky
Renaissance
question.
Movement of Cameroon, is highly expecting participation at next year's polls.
Yes, and we strongly believe this is where our people will come back together. This is where we will decide what we want for the future of this country. This is where we will decide which kind of leader reflect what we are and who we are here as a country. So we do believe that 2018 is the year, and that we should not miss that opportunity to decide to reshape the destiny of this country. Now,
can the elections hold
in
successfully?
very practical way, it's a very valid
You have
question.
a country that is
What
being
do we
threatened
do?
up north. You have a country with one part of...
It's the same thing. Northwest is the same story. Southwest is the same story. If you're honest enough, you will admit that in the West Province you have
West region.
A region, sorry.
Call it province.
Yes, I'm
Renaissance
old. You can
movement.
see that. I'm very old. So in the West region, you also have security issues. No matter whether or not you media are telling, you will know that this is happening. So far north, Adamawa, east, northwest, southwest, west. How many regions do you want to organize peaceful elections in?
Okay. Now, Henry, there's a release from the presidency, or rather Secretariat of the Presidency of the Republic, recently issued, which indicates that the budget for the 2018 elections has been moved up from 35 to 50 billion CFA francs.
Yeah.
Now, some say that's an indicator that the elections will hold as constitutionally slated in 2018.
Yes.
Do you think it's something that could be threatened as a result of the uprisings
It could
in
be
the Northwest
threatened.
and Southwest?
It could be threatened, but there is nothing bad in making projections. Even if the projections
The
will
threats
not
are
hold,
there.
even if the threats are there, prepare for the elections. Remember that the Social Democratic Front postponed its Congress or its convention. I think some other party, she's with the MRC.
And you are with?
Maybe they too are monitoring things as they are moving.
And you are with?
Yeah.
Sorry?
And you are with? She is with the MRC and you are with?
No, I'm not of any political shades now.
Thank you for the message.
but then every human being is a political beast.
Yeah, of course, you have the right
So
to have
you
an
have a right
affiliation.
to have an affiliation. Okay, so but then if they have budgeted 50 billion for the elections and with all the threats, let me just say this: if things are not solved, like we see the militarization, heavy militarization of the region, like we see the persistent threat in Kolofata or extreme north or far north of the country, then you call for elections, and in elections you need to explain your political program, your social, economic, etc., etc. The people are large; they are running away. Now, who will you preach to? You understand that we will still revisit a scenario where people will transport, I don't know how you call them, Cameroonians from one part of the country to another part of the country, and then they go sit there, then they explain it to them, they clap and go back, or maybe transport them to go and vote to give the impression that, well, the people actually accepted the message. It becomes difficult in an atmosphere of uncertainty to hold an election. If we are all monitoring the situation, if at the end of the day, you arrest the problem, the issue, and Cameroonians see it and say, okay, well, it's right for us to go for elections, then the electorate will decide. The president will decide when to call the electorate.
Okay, now let's get back to the government mouthpiece. Well, some call him the government spokesperson. He's called Issa Chiroma Bakari. Last evening, that was on November 30, he actually invited journalists to a press meeting in Yaoundé. And this is how he described the events that have been unfolding, and the very events that got the president talking tough and warning that he is vowing to silence and probably decimate the Anglophone secessionists who are currently tracking and killing security officers in what's being known as a serial targeting of the country's defense and security forces. But here's Issa Chiroma Bakari.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the night between November 28 and 29, 2017, some heavily armed terrorists attacked the elements of our defense and security forces dispatched within the framework of mission to protect the territorial integrity of our country in the Akborkem German locality in the Manu Division, Southwest region. A serviceman of the 22nd Motorized Infantry Battalion of our army were cowardly assassinated during the attack. Their staff surgeon, T. Julius Angu, Lance Corporal Vula Victor, Private Second Class Yinda Bobekreo, and Private Second Class Nuchumwo Mani Raphael Willie. The assailant, who claim to belong the armed wing of the secessionist movement called Southern Cameroon Amazonian Consortium United Front, probably came on canoe, making their way through the particularly intense fluvial traffic in this area due to the strong presence of fishermen and traders. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Paul Biya, Head of State, Commander-in-Chief of the Army, pays homage to the memory of these valiant soldiers who fell in the battlefield while on duty to defend our dear fatherland. To our defense and security forces, the nation together as one and in all solidarity expresses its admiration for their courage, sense of honor and patriotism. The sacrifice of their commitment and of their lives will not be in vain, and they will always benefit from the support of their compatriot. To the bereaved family, the head of state addresses his most heartfelt condolences and most intimately shares their pain at this very sad moment. This other terrorist attack, which occurred in the Manu Division, brings to 8 the number of military staff and gendarmes who have already been killed by the secessionists. The government is therefore taking as witnesses those who some time ago were still questioning our words when we claim to be dealing with full-fledged terrorist organization. This escalation of indiscriminate violence and murder, specifically targeting those to whom the Republic has entrusted the responsibility to defend the territorial integrity and the security of people and goods within its border, calls more than ever on the national and international community to take full account of the current situation in the northwest and southwest region of Cameroon. For how can we maintain dialogue with an interlocutor whose only ideology is the partition of a state that is legitimate and recognized as such by all international bodies? How can we observe tolerance and appeasement faced with such an inflexible opponent whose sole values are extremism and disregard for human life. On behalf of the government, I once again draw the attention of human rights defense organizations that are so quick to stigmatize public authorities and defense and security forces on this issue. We will not cease to ponder if the soldiers who were cowardly murdered while not in a battlefield do not deserve their consideration and are not, if only for their belonging of humankind, are not covered by the human rights that those organizations claim to defend. We are asking them to instruct us on how to understand the silence about the crime committed in the open by those who yesterday still and perhaps today are enjoying their favors and their protection. We will continue to buttress that the Cameroonian people living in these two regions are in a situation of hostage and captivity, taken in the clothes of inveterate and shameless outlaws. The government will therefore take all of its responsibility to free these citizens from the state of captivity, terror, and trauma resulting from the anti-republican ideology conveyed by the secessionists. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Paul Biya, in his capacity as a depository of the sovereignty of the people, will continue to promote the virtues of dialogue, peace, and tolerance so that the living together of all the components of the entire nation shall prevail. Thank you for your kind attention.
And thank you to Minister Chiroma for explaining that to us. And he says that, this is finding vindication for the government when he says that those NGOs, I'm looking at the likes of Amnesty International and so on, that don't hesitate to blast Cameroon when some of these uncanny reports about human rights abuses emerge from the country, should now take on the population that is, or the secessionists rather, is going after, that are going after the security officers.
Oh yes, and I believe we should expect a report on that, and maybe that time Mr. Chiroma and our other friends will realize or see that if you take the example of Amnesty International, when there is a crime against humankind, they denounce it, no matter where the offense or the criminal offense or the crime is coming from. This very report of Amnesty International about what was happening in the far north with our military, first paragraph was about what Boko Haram people are doing, Cameroonians. Right. So we know, I mean, they spent decades building their reputation, and Mr. Chiroma spent big decades building his own reputation. We know who is where and who is who.
Henry, do you expect to see a report from the likes of Amnesty International blasting the secessionists for targeting the defense and security forces in the days ahead?
I think the Amnesty International is working, and it's not like coming up every day because one or two sporadic killings are here and there, or hostage taking, if at all there is any. But I think Amnesty gives midterm reports or semester reports of what is happening across the globe, in area and in everywhere. And I know that they want to investigate as usual before making any pronouncement.
Okay. Now, you've rubbed shoulders with Dr. Foge. That's a political analyst based in Yaoundé several times, I'm correct?
Yes, of course.
Now, Dr. Foge, Michel, says that if the situation got to the stage of its degeneration, it is because the government allowed it. He actually says that the army was not supposed to be involved in the resolution of the flaring Anglophone crisis.
And we've been saying that right from the beginning, and I think every Cameroonian has been saying that, but for the government, and that's the problem. I believe this government is not very good at finding solutions to our issues, and that it's been the case for long. I believe there comes a stage where when you are unable to do what you're supposed to do, what you're paid for, at the point of time, there are consequences, and we are facing the consequences. The sad part of it is it's not only them who are facing the consequences. We are all in the same boat, as we say in French, and we are facing the consequences. Our kids, our fathers, our sisters are facing the consequences, and this is what is unbearable about that. And this is the reason why, when it comes to solution, our prayer to Cameroonians is to say we should stop waiting for someone else to make the new Cameroon happen. If we want to solve that issue, then we should tackle it ourselves. You saw the funds leaving their village to go and meet the president. This is an attempt from Cameroonians to try and solve the problem.
Okay.
When the president of CRM addresses the nation and says you should create a space for dialogue and talk about it with serenity, this is an attempt to solve the issue. When Felix Nkongo Abobala goes down to talk about this and to ask that our fellow Cameroonians who have been held in custody are released, this is an attempt to solve the issue. And these are the efforts that will lead us to the solution. We should forget about the incompetent ones.
Okay, Henry, Dr. Foge, who is supposed to be a friend of yours, actually says that this matter could have been resolved without necessarily involving the army.
Yes,
correct?
Yes, it's very correct, because at every point in time when people rise up, the government uses the military. Remember, the Social Democratic Front Party was supposed to have a march in Douala. I think that was 3 weeks ago. The government sent the gendarmes. The gendarme is a military. The government
It's an arm of the
it's an arm of the
army,
military, yes. It is not a good thing for a nation where at every point in time when there is a civilian matter, even armless babies should be asking for breast milk, you send the military. It doesn't speak well for a nation where at all times it is the military that is on the ground, when it comes to basic issues. If students of secondary school should now say no, there is this amount that has been increased as a probably PTA, I'm afraid the government will not send the police but the army.
Okay.
So you cannot use the army at all the times. It gives the world an image. We might be saying these things thinking that the rest of the world is not watching us. Because in as much as we watch what is happening in the other part of the world, they too are watching us, and they know. And it's not a good thing to use the army all the time. It means your own people are not even confident in themselves. It becomes dangerous.
Some call it scaremongering by the government to try and silence any dissent emerging from English-speaking Cameroon. Now, we have several more topics lined up for you. I'm afraid we might not get on to some of them. 500,000 laptops promised from President Paul Biya to Cameroonian university students coming up. We ask, better late than never. The SDF maintains its parliamentary disturbance because lawmakers from that lead opposition party, according to some, say this session of parliament will not unfold successfully if the Anglophone crisis is not fitted into the deliberations agenda. Right up next, we're going to look at the predictable crack-up within the ranks of the Northwest Funds Union. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll take you to the Northwest region.
Okay.
Thank you very much. For now, I don't believe very much on the Northwest Funds because they have engaged themselves in partisan politics, which to their subjects is not correct. And that's why they have lost their reputation.
You know, with the changing times, I want to say that the funds, they still have a very, very big role they play in our sociocultural domain. However, with the present situation where money-minded people, politics and whatsoever, they are leading them, as a matter of fact, very many of them are going completely astray.
And so after years of, we apologize for the hiccups in the presentation of those feeds that are going to come later on in the course of our discussions. Because after years of bitter leadership tussles, rumors of systemic corruption, greed, and shameless politicking, the predictable collapse of the Northwest Funds Union, a once highly venerated institution, is almost about to happen, because on Saturday, November the 23rd, at two venues in Cambe and Bamenda, all in the Northwest region, the union witnessed the election of two presidents. This is quite unfortunate, Michelle. The funds of the Northwest once commanded tons of respect.
Yes, as a lot of our elders in this country. And yes, I want to confirm that in my view, we should not put the blame on them specifically.
On the funds?
Yes, just as this is an exception in our environment. You've just listened to one elder who is not showing a lot of respectful or of respectable
That's
behavior.
a tactful way of slamming all of them.
I think we are in the turmoil as a society, as a nation, as people. We are in the turmoil. There was a way some of us used to live, and this is not sustainable anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The values that they...
How did we get to the stage?
Selfishism.
Selfishness?
Yes, so sorry. Selfishness.
Actually mentioned greed when I read out the intro.
Yes, I think all of this comes back to who do you love the most? Do you love other people the most or you? If you're doing something out of love for your country, for your community, for your children, it changes the whole dynamics. This is selfishness at work.
Okay.
And it doesn't work, because if you are dragging your part and I'm dragging, we cannot create something for all of us. Mm-hmm. We would destroy what we have.
Okay.
We have to learn to share. And it's not so much about what the funds are doing. If it is sad, it is a good thing, because we know that we, the younger generation, now have to rebuild what has been destroyed.
Is it going to be possible to rebuild anything, Henry Kajan, when we all know that our funds and our chiefs are soaked to the neck in politics? They are soaked to the neck in networking. In fact, they are going to want to be there for life.
It's going to be very
Talking
difficult.
about the Northwest Funds Union in particular.
Yes, in particular. Now with the fraction, the Teche camp versus the other camp, it becomes difficult. You were talking about greed. If not of greed, how will you expect that people will violate constitution of the Funds Union to give them more time? Fonteche has outlived his time as
his mandate at the helm of the Northwest actually expired in 2014, but he stayed on successfully for 9 years.
Before he came, others have been there. Others have been there.
Fon Chafa
Isaac has been there. Fon Anen Francis has been there, etc., etc. They did not flout with the constitution. Now you are creating conflict, and then the most you said the once venerated Fonds Union or Fonds or chiefs. When our chiefs start soaking themselves in politics, you could just expect that. And at one point, there's a certain writer who tagged our chiefs as royal beggars because they use these now as a lobby group. You know, they are formed now lobby camps, etc. Whereas they would have united themselves and talked the problems of the nation. I'm not talking only the Anglophone problem.
Okay.
If, for example, there's a problem in the South, the Northwest Fonds could move to the South and meet their peers of the South and discuss the problem of their people. But now, look at what they are doing. Do you think they can be a solution to the crisis that is even plaguing the Anglophone region?
Let me give you a hint. Probably the decision by President Paul Biya to accord fixed salaries for some of these chiefs is a pathway to the solution. But here's the story, Michelle. The rather unfortunate events at Nowefu or within Nowefu unfolded on Saturday, November the 23rd, when Fon Jab Fu Ibrahim of Nkambe was voted president of the Nowefu faction that is supported or lauded over by Fonteche, the outgone president, who remains the president of that version of the Nowefu General Assembly, and his countryman, the countryman for the Fon of Nkambe, Shea Barnabas Mbungwe of Mbot, was designated the same day in Bamenda as Fon, and as president of another Nowefu faction with support from the likes of Chafa Isaac.
And this is because we tend to see these things as opportunities to get privilege.
Yes.
If we start looking at it as not a burden, but a heavy load, responsibility, as the synonyms of being a fund. If you look at it and see responsibility, accountability, you being obliged to deliver, then you will see you will get a lot less of less candidates, and that's the reason why we keep saying we are not going to get over this or these rather crisis by looking at other people and saying this person should be doing this, this other person should be doing that. We are going to get over this by tackling the issue ourselves.
Okay.
Let's focus on what each of us say, and let's ask ourselves, what am I doing to help solving the issue? Then we are going, we stand a chance to go the right way and to get to the right destination.
Okay.
These things about the funds being not having a behavior we are not so proud of,
because they are probably
sad.
remote controlled by politicians.
Yes, or by money.
Okay.
But the thing is,
Kejan used a beautiful connotation
the
when he called them
symbol
royal
is important.
beggars.
It is important to be respectful for our traditions.
Okay.
It's not those people. The important part of it is our tradition and what they represent, the symbol behind them. So remove the symbol from the people who cannot wear it with pride, and then let's move forward.
Okay. Now, Kejan, this is a paradox where the Nowefu motto is hinged on these three words: unity, peace, and development. For several years, it's been struggling to build up a befitting secretariat in Bamenda. But let me tell you what happened, and this is a revelation from the Post newspaper. When the faction that held its elective General Assembly met, they met in the corridors of some backyard alley because that secretariat has been rented out by Fonteche to a computer school. That's a big indicator of how people personalize community institutions and trade them off.
And that is a good one coming from the Post. And I think Fonteche should be able to give an account to his peers on how he got to give out.
He's actually, and this is just for your information, Fonteche is actually the president of the General Assembly of the Nkambe faction of Nowefu, which enjoys the backing of Prime Minister Philemon Yang and others. And is he going to render an account to anybody? He doubles as senator.
He should render an account. It doesn't matter whether you are backed by the Prime Minister or by the head of state. You should be able to render an account to the people, because it is clear that you rented the secretariat of it. In fact, I want to even believe that the Prime Minister, if he respects Fonteche, should ask him the question. This is an institution that should not be that should be respected.
Probably someone should call the cops.
And that's where, I believe
the Prime Minister should even
something
ask him,
that
don't
could be done.
desecrate this. It's like you are desecrating the crown, the royal crown.
Let's get
You
some legal
you give
input
our
into this.
institution to a school, and you are receiving money. The money goes into
That's
your
unilaterally.
pocket. Unilaterally, it's
When
not
people
correct.
actually came together in fundraiser ceremonies to provide funds for the erection
yet-
of the yet to be completed secretariat.
Even
And
if he
that
has the
is the-
backing of President Biya, Michelle, it doesn't matter. It's
Can
not correct.
anybody wake up from the community in the morning and drag him to court?
That is the thing. This is where the focus should be. It's not about what they are doing. It's about what I am doing. Those people who were participating in the fundraising can ask if nobody else is doing it. Democracy, republic means this is for everyone and each one of us.
Okay.
So it's important that at the end of the day we understand that we the people are the one accountable. If something is not going on well, if the funds are not doing what they are supposed to do, if they are desecrating our symbols, our crown, we should hold them to account.
Okay.
So that's where I think the solution will come from. The people, and we've seen that in other places where they don't recognize the chief and they get him to step down,
Okay.
the people. And I believe that's where we are going.
I guess that's something called impeachment. If you don't mind, let's rush out to Kumbo now and meet Lambert Kevin. We're not going to see him physically, but we're going to see his contributions to Canal English Speciale. It's in the form of the Vox Pops you started having a glimpse of earlier on. These are the thoughts of people in Basso on what the funds have become.
Thank you very much. For now, I don't believe very much on the Northwest Funds because they have engaged themselves in partisan politics, which to their subjects is not correct. And that's why they have lost their reputation.
You know, with the changing times, I want to say that the funds, they still have a very, very big role they play in our socio-cultural domain. However, with the present situation where money-minded people, politics and whatsoever, they are leading them, as a matter of fact, very many of them are going completely astray. But in any society where there is that respect and where they carry out their respect perfectly very well, I think they do have some authority.
But you will also remember that we are in an evolving society where there are a lot of changes, especially in the economic and political sector. That is the reason why the funds may not necessarily still have the authority they had in the past. Because if a fund is poor, he can easily be lured into errors. If a fund is politically weakened, he can easily be led into errors. I'm sure that what has caused them not to have the authority they had is because of the economic and the political situation of the country, which is evolving, of course.
On a personal note, I do not still, to a greater extent, believe in funds. Why? Because I discover, it has just come to my notice that with the evolution, so far so good, it looks like the authority that the funds used to have before is no more. Is no more. How can this be evident? You can just evident this from the fact that at times you will see a fund who is supposed to maybe start from performing his traditional rights, which are who stands like the custodian of the culture or the customs and the traditions, but he will actually at one point in time maybe prefer to go for political bazaars, and that is risking his own people traditionally. So actually, to me, I do not still, to a greater extent, I don't still believe in the funds, because at any point in time, it has come to the greatest notice of all that at one point in time, when a fund is talking to his subordinates, at one point in time, you will discover him, he cannot say 1, 2, 3, up to 5 things without talking politics inside.
when a fund is engaged in partisan politics, be it in any party, he or the fund himself will lose his values, because the subjects from the opposition party opposing the party that the fund belongs to will not be partaking in traditional activities, which is not good. For me, I think that it is better for our funds to stay aloof from partisan politics.
You know, some of these issues, they raise emotions and people just talk. I didn't quite get what Shay was saying. That's the last speaker in the Vox Pop bundle when he said the funds go for political bazaar. And I got you just chuckling and laughing uncontrollably almost.
Well, I think she said it all and harvested all the gains.
Okay.
Well, she talked of funds going for political bazaars. It's very clear what she means. That politics, in fact, the funds are drowned in politics and now forget their own people. So politics has drunken even the funds. That is why you find them, some of them are MPs, some of them are senators. They don't even listen to their people anymore.
Fonteche actually doubles as a senator.
As a senator, you have near Kamga in the west region of Banjul. You have formerly used to have the people like Fondo Gagwan. You have Senator Mukete. These are funds.
Now, Michelle, some are positing that the way out of the crisis for some of these funds unions, because you don't only have the Norwefu in the Northwest that is soaked in turmoil, you also have the Southwest Chiefs Conference, which has been trespassing, dire streets for a couple of moments now. Some say the way out is to dissolve and disband these groups and let the people be able to sit down and come out with who they want to lead them in any union.
It's a difficult one. I always try to refrain from giving advices or lecturing about business I know very little on. I am sure that if we go back to the right mindset, if we are looking for something just and fair and good,
it's going to take time.
Yes, and do we have something?
And while it takes time, the degeneration, the deterioration continues.
I think it will go quicker and quicker. So we will soon get to the bottom of it, and the global situation at the moment makes it less important anyway. What is happening in those regions at the moment makes it less important to know if the association is doing well or not. We have far more serious issues to tackle at the moment, in my humble view.
Okay, now let's go back and visit, reactions on this issue, the predictable crack-up happening within the ranks of the Northwest Funds Union. We'll hear from two funds, the fund of Mbe 2 and, of course, the fund of Baligam. Let's listen to them.
This is not a problem that just started but now. Because if you look at it strictly, when the senator from Teche took over from Chafak, from Chafak, there were still problems until the end at the level of going to court. If you can buy the idea with me. So the only thing is for us to come together and dialogue our differences and look where this problem began. It all began, many might be talking politically, hiding their feelings. I am a fund today, but I could be proud that I've lived with my father and I've attended this Norwest Funds Union for some time, whereby I can know brief history about the Norwest Funds Union.
Bamenda found their palace, who has opened the door for them. He found there was nobody who can prove that he was the person who opened the door for them. So we asked the fund of Gwen to tell the deal whether he has given them a d'accord to hold such meeting. The answer was no. It means that that meeting which these people were holding was an illegal meeting. Very, very illegal, because we do not know. They didn't send us any information. This is what we mentioned. It is now that we're going to have, we have come back. We had come back. We have to search and to know who was holding a meeting in Bamenda and for what purpose. We have not even had it. But all of us are searching around to know how many funds were there in Bamenda. But we were surprised to hear that they were in our union house. We asked the phone on Queen, who was with us, said, do you, as you were coming, do you separate the other funds to hold the meeting in our meeting house, which is in our village? He said no. We see another faction holding a meeting in Bamenda. We look at it, but I say, how many of them are there? How many funds were there in Bamenda? In Santa here, it is only one fund who singled himself to join the other side, the other faction. That is Fun of John. And we were surprised. We were surprised to see Fun of John joining the other faction, which we don't know. All the funds of Meza we moved to Kambe. Dunga Manto, Momo, everybody, we moved to Kambe. We hosted. Kambe hosted our meeting. We made our voting within ourselves, who should take. We look at all the funds. The funds, the ideas of all the funds was pointing Kambe. So we all agreed. Now, we had to go to Kambe to round up, to see that every fund, if every fund is to vote to fund on Kambe, all of us should be one. Now, we had gone to Kambe, arranged for the meeting. The funds in Kambe agreed. We asked them to see them within themselves, give us one name, of which they did. They sat together and gave us the fund of Kambe's name. And that is why we all agreed to go to Kambe to host the Nowefu. The last meeting which we had in Bamenda, all the funds were inside the hall, in our Nowefu hall. We agreed that the assembly now should extend ourselves to Kambe. All of us agreed. No, but despite the fact that we prolonged it, because the other factions, that was then we tried to see factions coming up. Chafa came up with another idea. We say no. She want to take. I say, how many times do you want to take? Take the whole the Nowefu. It's wrong. You had already hosted the Nowefu in Dop. Dop has already do their turn. Momo, now this is the turn of Momo, and other division has already hosted. So the last division now is Kambe. Dungamanto. That was how we agreed.
The third of Bali Kumbat, who was the president of the Northwest Funds Union. But even at the middle, if they found something wrong with him, as the constitution says, they will abuse the constitution democratically to vote him out and bring in another president so that the union continue to run smoothly. But instead, they split into two, as what you are saying that happened. They allowed the union when and put up another union, which was headed by Chafak. And later on now, it was headed by His Royal Majesty Senator Techa, who are now hand over the power, and handing on over this power, the fractions are still going on.
He's just joining us on the panel now, straight on from Sweet FM That's the sister news outlet to Canal de English, of course, and Canal de International. Meme Dominique, it's such a pleasure to see you here.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here, and good afternoon to Barrister.
Before you came on the panel, you were, of course, listening and following up to the comments and reactions from some of those funds of the Northwest region. Fund Isaac Chafa wanted to take again.
Yeah, this issue of funds today has become an issue that from the beginning, you see people scramble to who is going to be a fund in a particular village. And when they are funds, they equally try to be the president of the funds union because of one reason or the other. It doesn't surprise me because we are on the eve of an election year 2018. And like it or not, funds in the Northwest and any other village in this country, they play a very vital role as far as elections is concerned. Funds can influence people. They can even pay for some juju type of thing to frighten people to vote for a political party. So when election is approaching, who is going to lead an entire union of funds matters so much in this country.
Of course.
You see, today I listened to my colleague Kijan Henry talking about funds, being senators, being parliamentarians. It is deeply rooted. Sometimes political rallies are organized in funds palaces. And when you enter there, you don't know what have been sprinkled around. They do many type of things that funds, a tradition today and the politics is something that we cannot really separate. Okay. So they fight on who is going to be the president of Norwefu. We saw how a meeting held in Camber in the Donga Mountain Division, another one in Bamenda. So many people, different groups are canvassing for support in order to become the president of the funds union and possibly influence elections when it comes up next year, 2018.
Just to wrap it up on this issue, Michelle, with your permission, Japfu Ibrahim, that's the fund of Camber, was elected by over 200 members of the cracked Northwest Funds Union as president of one of the factions, the one that held his General Assembly in Camber. Shane Bungwe II of Mbot was elected in Bamenda as president of the Fonchafa-backed faction of Norwefu. And if you don't mind, let's rev up the pace and move on to something else. And this is talking about how the SDF is upholding its parliamentary disturbance, because lawmakers from that political entity were at the National Assembly again on Wednesday, where they proved unstoppable in their avowed determination to block all deliberations until the Anglophone crisis is fitted into the discussion agenda of the parliament. After transforming the place into a Boistero song and dance theater on November 23, they were thus at work again on November 29, drowning Philemon Yang's, that's the Prime Minister's, unveiling of the economic, financial, social, and cultural program and roadmap for 2018 in total dissonance. Here's Tabby Clarkson with a wrap-up of what transpired on November the 29th in Yaoundé.
It was by 11:35 a.m. this Wednesday morning that House Speaker Kavayege Jibril opened the floor in the House of Assembly. Then came a minute of silence to honor the gendarmes who lost their lives this morning in Bamenda. 10 minutes later, that is by 11:46 a.m., Prime Minister Philemon Yang was asked by the Speaker of the House to present the economic and social program for the year 2018. As Philemon Yang was about to begin his presentation, Honorable Joseph Mbanazem, SDF parliamentary group leader, stood up to say nothing can be presented in parliament when Anglophones are dying almost on a daily basis.
The SDF is saying this: we have done everything possible. We have written to you. We have written to government. We have written to the head of state. And we are saying our country is moving towards a destination which before long we will not be able to control. The SDF has indicated all what is happening in the country. And last week I told you that this House cannot sit and pretend that everything is just normal, that things are going on well. We cannot be going unwell in Betua. Children are going to school in Betua. And then in, I don't know where, in Babanki and wherever, other children are not going to school, and we think that it is correct.
With their peace plans, SDF MPs started singing, a way to showcase their disagreement vis-à-vis the Yaoundé government.
Nous dépendons de Kumba dans la région du sud-ouest. Les marchés relatifs à la fourniture des intrants et l'agroport de production de maïs en Yamboya.
Despite the disturbing nature of SDF MPs, Prime Minister Philemon Yang went on with his presentation.
La deuxième phase, portant sur un denier d'environ 23 km pour un coût total de 38 milliards.
As the Prime Minister left the House of Assembly by 5 minutes past 1 p.m., alongside other members of government, the question on every lip is for how long will SDF MPs keep on disturbing deliberations in the House of Assembly.
We're only queuing from where you left off. Tabi Clarkson, a beautiful report regarding what happened at the National Assembly on November the 29th. For how long can the SDF sustain its maintenance of the parliamentary disturbance, Michelle?
It's very difficult. I think SDF will be better placed to say that, to answer that question.
Can they take it to term? Or they're going to run out of steam before long?
I think the right question is, did we expect that from the SDF?
Did you expect that from the SDF?
I did not, and I'm very moved to say that, because these are people who are telling everyone in the world that things are bad and that we need to do something about it. So for once, we see our parliamentarians standing up for their people.
Okay.
And that feels very, very good. Now, where is that leading us? What is it that we should take back home? We are watching. What is it that we should take back home, seeing that? Is this telling us how we should choose our parliamentarians going forward? Because, of course, if the majority of the parliamentarians were not members of CPDM, maybe the situation will be different. They will not be singing. They will be talking about the issue and resolving it. So this is telling us next time, and next time is in a couple of months, choose your leaders in a way that can assure you that when there's an issue, they will talk about it and tackle it, because that's what we are paying taxes for.
Of course, provided the elections actually hold as constitutionally slated in 2018.
If not, then we will have to find another way. The bottom line is we need to tackle these issues, and we need every Cameroonian out of this crisis.
I was going to try and turn a blind eye to what you said when you said, if not, we will need to tackle it. But of course, you concluded beautifully. Dominique, remember you were saying before she intervened that this is common practice under skies. South Africa, for example, such sessions culminate in fist fights.
Yeah, South Africa, Nigeria, in some advanced democracies, sometimes you see people, they go sometimes speak with hard voices at the National Assembly. But let me just say that what the Social Democratic Front parliamentarians is doing today, I'm not surprised. I saw this coming because SDF started by exhausting all the legal and the peaceful ways of resolving this issue. Now, let me just keep aside
what they're doing currently is illegal.
Let me just keep aside what SDF have been doing since the beginning of this crisis. But let's take November. The beginning of the plenary session, they started by totally boycotting the plenary session to show their anger for failure to include the Anglophone crisis in the agenda for discussion.
After all, most of them had resigned.
Yeah, most of them have resigned.
Their resignation from Parliament.
When their boycott meant nothing to the Speaker of the National Assembly and the President of the Senate, as far as the entire lawmaking bodies, they decided to come to the National Assembly. This time not to play the role of empty chairs, letting the parliamentarians of the CPDM say what they want to say, but to to show to the world that they are really angry. They want this issue to be discussed at the level of the National Assembly. I think that it is the failure of the National Assembly to put this into the agenda that the President of the Republic, back from Ivory Coast, decided to use the military way to solve the issue.
How did he do that?
Because he's declaring war against secessionists. If this issue was discussed at the level of the National Assembly, maybe the President would not have made the statement he made yesterday.
And
okay,
it is so difficult, let me just chip in there.
Sure.
It is so difficult to follow and to understand where our president is leading us, because a couple of weeks ago, he said, okay, let us release all the people that we've been prosecuting.
Some of them are still
because we were calling them terrorists. So we were negotiating with them, and then we decided, no, we're not negotiating anymore, they are terrorists. And then in the middle of the trial, we say, oh no, just forget about the prosecution. You keep some of them, you release some of them, while the so-called terrorists are being persecuted, you start a war. It's very, very difficult to understand where we are going like that. Following that path is very difficult, and that is the reason why we as CRM, we are saying we should find another way. Okay. We should address the issue in another way. And I
know somebody who refers to what you're explaining as giving a dog a bad name so you can hang it without any worries. Yes. And one person who's giving the SDF lawmakers a very bad name, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to hang them, is Doug Collins, who is an honorable, a member of parliament from the CPDM. He says it is unacceptable that the National Assembly be transformed into a forum for noise making by people without education.
At least something is happening.
He's referring to the SDF MPs as fools, on school bunch.
Well, I think to Honorable Doug Collins, disrupting the National Assembly because we want to resolve an issue that is killing Cameroonians, both civilians and the military. If you consider them as fools, then I doubt the premises to which is using to judge these parliamentarians as fools. I think that these parliamentarians, what they are doing now is a total demonstration of total frustration and the lack of confidence in the two lawmaking houses. Remember, these issues have been going on for over a year today. What does it take the National Assembly and the Senate to put it for discussion and bring out a solution that will save people? Okay. Civilians are being killed, military men are being killed on a daily basis, property destroyed, students are not going to school. All these mean nothing to the lawmaking bodies. But the question I'm asking is, what is happening to other political parties that are well represented at the National Assembly? We have your political parties, the Barrister. We have UNDP at the Senate. We have other political parties, CDU. They are there. What is happening? Is it like, the political majority of the CPD have swallowed up these other political parties and they have nothing to say? Because when you get people say everything now concerning the National Assembly, it's as if we have just two political parties. Those who want that the Anglophone crisis should be discussed, SDF, and those who don't want it to be discussed, CPDM. What about the other political parties? No voice?
Just to note that the CPDM counts what some called best majority at the National Assembly because they have 148 members of parliament. But just to be fair with Honorable Doug Collins, he actually says that, the CPDM majority is not hostile to the SDF request for the inclusion of the Anglophone crisis on the deliberations agenda, but he says the approach for the request is unethical. This is a point that weds another point from Gregoire Oona, who is actually deputy for the Vice Prime Minister in charge of relations with the assemblies, Amadou Ali. Gregoire Oona says the SDF is flouting procedures.
Yes, and so...
Because there are procedures that you need to follow to inject subjects on the parliamentary agenda.
Yes, but what is at the core of this conversation? Is it the procedure or the lives of Cameroonians? What are they there for? What is it that we were expecting from this session anyway? Okay? Because this is talking about the budget. So the money, again, Cameroonians are going to give to them to run the country. What for? What are they doing running the country? So, for once, some of us are telling you that we need a conversation. We are telling you what is important for us. You are representing us there, and we are telling you this what you want to discuss is not important for us. And the answer should be, because you've used the wrong tone, we are not going to discuss something you yourself, as Mr. Doe Collins, are saying is important. Is that responsible as an answer? Yes, we should not. We can have opinions on what is the tone, and we can. There are consequences. Those people have procedures to handle. If it is noise, handle the people who are making noise.
Okay.
But then handle the noise and tackle the issue.
Okay. Now I think technicians are indicating in a rather urgent tone that we are desperately running out of time. But briefly, Meme Dominique, some have argued that the SDF is using the parliamentary disturbance to reposition itself on the front line of the self-rule struggle, or, if you don't mind, calls and clamors for a return to federalism. Is that something you buy?
I think SDF is a political party, and whatsoever,
which apparently had lost face in the course of the evolution of the crisis.
It's left to the people to decide if SDF has, because I've not seen any political party that have really gained ground as far as this Anglophone crisis is concerned.
I'm not sure she will agree with you from the
she's going to agree, because what we are seeing at the forefront since the beginning of the crisis is civil society activists, not really political parties. Okay. Many people, most Cameroonians, have lost faith as far as political parties is concerned. SDF cannot say anything and the people will listen as far as the crisis is concerned. CPDM, neither CPDM nor any other political party. I think SDF, any word or action that comes from the Social Democratic Front Party today is political. And it happens to all political parties. Okay. Even the fact that CPDM militants, they don't want this issue to be discussed at the National Assembly is equally political, because they know what it stands to gain if this issue is not discussed at the level of the National Assembly. And the SDF knows what it stands to gain. If it is discussed and there's peace, elections are coming up next year, so the better position themselves ahead of next year.
It all hovers around the elections, doesn't it? Michelle, I want to find out from you. Would you say the SDF is using the parliament to catch up on lost political capital?
I would not say that, but I would say that if that was the case, and then why would we criticize that?
Okay.
The question we should ask, and we keep doing that, forgetting about the core issue. Do we have a crisis?
Do
yes. Do we have a crisis in this country?
What's the answer? Yes. Okay.
Very serious crisis. Do we have Cameroonians dying on a daily basis, leaving their homes? Do we need to address that issue? Yes is the answer to the question. Is this an attempt to resolve the issue? Yes is the answer to the question. If the SDF, as a consequence, becomes more respected by the Cameroonians, what's wrong with that? Seriously.
You're not going to be jealous?
We don't have to be jealous. We have to work better. Okay. And we have to respect Cameroonians for their ability to decide who's best to serve their interest. Okay. And that's what we're doing. At the CRM, we are working with the people. I agree with him. We're working with the people. We are trying to have all the Cameroonians around the country to know CRM, to know what we are about, what is our program, what is our dream for Cameroon, and first and foremost, as far as this crisis is concerned, that we want a reform of the institution and an open and national conversation about the kind of country we want. So we want to reread that constitution and to rewrite it, and we will not tell anyone this point of the conversation we will not have with you. So this is us trying to address a solution, and it is to the people to decide which political party would be given a chance to roll out the program they have.
Thank you
I
for
think
coming,
that's
Michelle.
how it should work in a democratic country, and that's what we are aimed to become.
Thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you for inviting me once again.
That's the first time for you on the Canal de English Speciale platform.
Yes.
We hope to have you again very soon.
And I hope to be back soon.
I hope you can be back next week, because next week we're going to roll out another topic. It concerns the 500,000 computers promised Cameroonian students by President Paul Biya. They were actually initially expected delivery in November. They've not come yet. We're still waiting, and so we're going to take up that subject. Plus, A beautiful reportage on that by you, Meme Dominique.
Sure.
Thanks sincerely for being here.
You're welcome. It's also
I love
a pleasure.
particularly your twist on the the elections next year, and of course the politicking by funds of the Northwest and chiefs of the Southwest, and of course traditional rulers elsewhere across Cameroon. Thanks a zillion to Frank Nonga, who was behind the cameras, Fangio Zhang, who was on the machines, Patrick Chamani on supervision, Donald Ntilo was pushing the buttons for us today. And of course all of that under the watchful eyes of Ndi Maureen, a special producer for Canal 2 English Special. Have a great weekend and see you next week. Bye-bye.